The power utility Eskom has announced an extension of rolling power blackouts from Wednesday until Friday. The power utility says that it will implement stage 2 load shedding starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. I think it started today, to be honest with you. I experienced it at 6 o'clock this evening. And the Eskom blames the blackout breakdowns of generating units. And for more on this, we're now joined by Energy Expert Ted Blom. Ted, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Good to talk to you. All right, Ted, can you hear us?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so you're one of those people I remember talking to a couple of years ago, actually, and you said that we would be in this cycle for a good number of years to come. Is this what you predicted, what you saw?
Absolutely. The writing was on the walls. Eskom hasn't been honest with us over what the exact cause of the various problems were. In 2008, they blamed broken or lack of generation capacity, which is a lie. It was part of the state capture of coal mining and corruption in the coal procurement sector. And today heralds another chapter in Eskom's corrupt dealings with coal suppliers, insofar as the governing party today celebrates a new contract as a co-partner in Sereti Mining to supply Eskom with very expensive coal. In fact, the coal price doubled from yesterday to today. And it's not Chancellor House this time that's involved, it's Butter Trust, and it's Tebe Investment. So the state capture is carrying on right under Mr. Zonder's nose, and nobody has raised a finger.
So we, the consumers, the citizens, will just pay the price?
So absolutely. I mean, there are two ways. You can say, well, let's do an economic scenario analysis of where Eskom is and what the chances are of it recovering. The one sort of scenario says, well, they hobble along and they keep the lights on by means of having excessive tariff increases, which is what they had over the last 12 years. We've had more than 500% tariff increases versus inflation of only 74, 78%. Nobody, not you, not I, and nobody has had a salary increase of 500% over the last 12 years. So Eskom is gorging out of our pockets the last pennies that we've got. And if it carries on like that, it can, and my scenarios only go to 2030. I thought I'd be dead by then. The tariff that Eskom needs is 25% year-on-year increases under its current broken model of generating electricity. If they can't get those increases, we will, as consumers, will pay the price. But if they do get the increases, we won't be able to afford them. And hence, my advice to people is that the best of two bad scenarios is get yourself off the grid as soon as possible. Do it in stages so that it's not a big bang. Do it modularly and take responsibility for your own electricity generation, because if Eskom does manage to keep some lights on, it's going to be at one hell of a cost, and it's going to bankrupt you in the process anyway. So yes, the outlook for Eskom as a national energy generator is very, very sad and very, very dark.
So do you think that COVID-19 helped Eskom a great deal? Because had we been functioning at full capacity, we wouldn't have been able to function at full capacity.
Well, that's exactly the point, is that Eskom is so hobbled, and despite the big promises that new management made when they took over from the beginning of last year, that they were going to refurbish the whole fleet of 80-something generation sets within 18 months under the current budget conditions. I mean, that was just a joke. And it's a pity that the leadership of Eskom think that South Africans can be treated as a joke. My own estimates are that it would take at least 5 years to do a refurbishment of the generation sets, if they could actually find parts to do all that, because a lot of the manufacturers have closed over the last 40 years. And secondly, it would require a budget somewhere around 600 billion rand, which of course Eskom doesn't have. So instead of being honest with us and coming out and saying, guys, we've got a problem, we want you to fix this, we haven't got the manpower or the know-how because that's retired. Secondly, we don't have the budget. And thirdly, we don't have the spare capacity to take units offline and do proper refurbishment, half-life refurbishment, and bring them back on. Instead of doing that, we've had a lot of spin and nonsense and lies from Eskom management. And that's what's really heartbreaking for the South African economy. Because you and I wake up every morning with hope in our hearts that these guys who are getting paid multi-million rand salaries, this average salary at Eskom is nearly R1 million per person, the average. And yet, day after day and month after month, we hear stories about units that are broken, that are old. I mean, the fallacy of old units is nonsense. I know of units over 100 years old that are running in perfect condition because they haven't been corrupted and they've been properly maintained. So yes, it's unfortunate that we are now the victim of the very hope that we've had that things would come right under the ANC over the last 12 years when we had our first load shedding.
All right. If I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is the biggest problem at Eskom is mismanagement and corruption.
Absolutely, and ineptitude. Don't forget for a moment that the management of Eskom was hijacked when Eskom was commercialized in 2001. 2001 was the year that Eskom won a global award for Utility of the Year in New York City. And they had availability of over 90%. They were one of the cheapest utilities in the world. And whilst they might not have been serving everybody at that stage, they certainly rolled out a lot of new electrifications year on year from about 1994 onwards. So yes, and then in 2001, the ANC took control of Eskom. They did the Eskom Commercialization Act of 2001, and Eskom management was appointed by government and the party in particular. And we've seen where 21 years of mismanagement, interference, corruption, et cetera, central planning has landed Eskom and South Africa. It put us in the worst spot. Our mining companies can't mine. In fact, there's certainly elite members of the ANC who have taken their smelters offshore to Malaysia, and they haven't told you about that. And they haven't told you why they've done that. They've done it because the power is not reliable here, and it's too expensive. They can't make money by smelting and mining in this country. And that is a crying shame on the ruling party. They've had a golden opportunity to take us forward, and they've just taken us backwards. Yeah.
All right. If we assume that the president finds a way to rein in corruption and somehow manages to get a good team there to manage Eskom, what needs to be done, what can be done to start to repair the damage?
Well, firstly, I think you have to do what was promised by Mr. Mabuza and Mr. Khadebe. I don't know if you remember them. There's been so many managers at Eskom in charge of the organization, more than 10 in 10 years. But they were the previous management team. And at the first wage talks, they talked about trying to put in a bit of a clamp because the headcount numbers had run away from 32,000 odd people. And I'm not going to insult workers by calling them workers, because most of the people at Eskom, certainly at head office, don't have a day job. They don't have job descriptions. They come to work. They spend their time in the coffee shops and in the cafeteria. And it ballooned from 32,000 under Mr. Damas right through to 48,000 people. A World Bank study on a parity basis indicated that Eskom doesn't need any more than 16,000 people and will then have to do a proper job. The workers at Eskom get paid 4 times more than a comparable person anywhere else in the world in the same type of job. So clearly there's a major productivity issue at Eskom. That's the one thing. The second thing is, I was part of the coal road planning team in 2006 to 2008. We identified that coal shortages were on the cards if Eskom didn't take a preemptive action. Brian Damas again came out and said he's going to build 40 new coal mines for Eskom to supply the power stations with coal. Well, we're now in 2021, and guess how many new coal mines have been built? 0. So now Eskom's buying coal off the street of poor quality. That's causing exacerbated wear and tear in the boilers, and that's what's leading to most of the breakdowns that you and I are experiencing at the moment. So yes, and then on top of that, with the corruption, Medupi escalated from 34 billion to over close to 260 odd billion at the moment. I think Kusile is exactly in the same area. The 400 billion debt of Eskom is largely attributable to corruption. And I said to the government long ago, before Zondo and anything, I said, sort out the corruption and you can write off the debt. Park it somewhere and put in a definite effort to recoup the stolen money. At least 200 billion of that, if not more, should be recoupable. And then Eskom won't have a 400 billion debt problem, it would have a far more manageable 200 billion debt problem. And combine that, you can actually reduce the price of electricity to where it should be if it hadn't been for corruption on the tariffs, which also needs to still get to Mr. Zondo. There's more than 800 billion rand that's been misappropriated by excessive tariff by the Eskom management. And those guys, those fat cats are still sitting at Eskom, smiling from ear to ear. In the face of having a hardship trying to pay our account. So if you sort that out, you bring back the price of electricity to about a quarter of where it is at the moment, and hopefully you get the economy functioning again. It will be an attractive area for a supplier for mining companies and heavy industry. We can get those 3 million plus who are jobless because of Eskom back to work. So it's not impossible, but you need to have a roadmap. It seems to me the current Eskom management have got no roadmap. They're just dancing to the tunes of their market. And I'm being very blunt.
All right. Perhaps in conclusion, are we looking at a long, hard winter? And we're at stage 2 load shedding now. Could we reach stage 4?
Okay, so I've come out, and let me just correct you, by the way.
Yeah.
Eskom last night load shedded 2,229 megawatts. In NERSA's book, that is level 3 load shedding. Level 2 load shedding is up to 2,000. Once you go over 2,000, it's level 3 or 4 or 5 or wherever it is.
Yeah.
So Eskom again lies to the public and says it's level 2 load shedding when indeed it's level 3 load shedding. I've last night come out and said that given that Eskom is so poorly run, they've had these OCGT diesel generators for 12 years. They still haven't built, in 12 years, they still haven't built proper storage for the diesel, and they run out of diesel after burning for 3 days. So yes, tomorrow is the 3rd day, and I anticipate them running out of diesel, and I wouldn't be surprised if we have level 4 load shedding for the rest of the week.
All right. Ted Blom, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.